All right, so we all love history and we all love movies. If you don't like history and movies, I mean, I don't want to sound rude or anything, but I think that there might actually be something wrong with you. Well, right now, for people who are into history and film, I am at the place. We're here in Gettysburg for the Gettysburg Film Festival, and this has been running for a couple of years now, and it has become like the event for people who are into history and film. So today, well, over the next few days actually, we are going to be just kind of going to some of the different events, talking to some people. We've got some history creators in the YouTube space who are here this weekend as well, and yeah, see what there is to see for all of us film and history nerds here on YouTube. All right, so we just got in here for our first event of the day, and holy smokes, we are already running into YouTube history creator royalty. We got Jared from Real History and Chris
Eli
from Vlogging Through History. We got Eli. All right. So, hey.
Right now,
yeah.
we are at the Gettysburg Film Festival.
Yes.
And dadgummit, we're going to have a thumping good time here with all these good folks. Wow.
Now you need to hit your head.
Wow.
Yeah. So kind of explain what this is. What do we got going on this weekend?
Oh my goodness, there's so much going on this weekend. It's history movies galore here at the Gettysburg Film Festival, and there are speakers, there's panelists, there are films, there's documentaries, and everything in between, interposed with all the glory and all the goodness that is the Gettysburg history establishment.
The other story is, we went to Washington. I was coming out of the film in Washington. There were two old guys, I don't know who they were. They could have been in Congress or who. And one old guy says, well, that's a pretty good film. Hell, I think it's longer than the battle. And then, that was terrible, really. But I went to Atlanta, and I arrived late in Atlanta, and it was in a big theater, and there was no middle aisle. It was like one gigantic aisle. So I was 20 minutes, half hour late, and I'm working my way across. Excuse me, pardon me. Hey, sit down over there. What's the matter with you? Oh, yeah, sorry. And I worked my way over to the center and found a seat. Okay, and we're watching the film, and gradually I hear this voice behind me. Well, now there, over there on Long Street, see, that was not a good move. And we're going to see where that affects the whole outcome of the battle. And it goes on to another sequence. Now, you see there, the Pickett's charge was a very bad decision. He's going, I think this guy, he knows a lot about it, but he's spoiling it for all the folks, you know. So I said, I didn't think he knew there was an intermission coming, and I was going to get to him at the intermission. So the lights came up at the intermission. I turned around. Oh, I'm glad to meet you, President Carter.
All right, well, we just finished up with the morning event with Martin Sheen and got to hang out with him quite a bit last year. That dude is seriously like the nicest guy on the planet. And we've got, as I mentioned earlier, all kinds of people who are showing up here to the festival this weekend. Ken Burns was here yesterday. And we also have some people who are connected with the series Band of Brothers. So John Orloff, who's one of the screenwriters, is going to be coming in later. And we've also got Matt Leach and Mark Lawrence, who played Talbert and Dukeman in the series. And also Dale Dye, who not only prepared the actors for their role, but he also played Colonel Sink in the series. So we are here at the Gettysburg Museum of History, and we're going to, Dale has never been to this museum before, so he's going to be showing up here in a little bit, and we're going to kind of just kick on the camera and follow him around and maybe get a few stories from him about his experience with the real guys from Easy Company in Band of Brothers.
Hey Dale, thanks for coming in.
Sure.
Welcome to the Gettysburg Museum of History.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming on board as our advisor, the advisory board. I'm over the moon about it, and we need the help.
Well, it doesn't look like it. I mean, this is a marvelous place. I mean, this is living history, and anytime you can be involved in something like that, it's a pleasure for me. I mean, this is the kind of place that keeps history alive, and it's so important that we do that for everybody that's coming up and hasn't seen what our military history really is.
Right. Well, the way this museum is laid out, now this is a historic building. This is what we call a Civil War building. It was here during the battle, or at least part of it was. Most of the buildings here in town that say, they have plaques out front that say Civil War building, 1863, means part of it was standing during the battle. They've all been added on to, and that's true with this one. This was actually a one-story building during the battle, and it was much smaller. So it's been added on. It looked nothing like this, but we tried to keep the historic feel in here. We wanted to keep the same doorways, and we opened it up a little bit, but we wanted to keep that old kind of old GAR Hall feel in here. And we're planning on doing that in the new museum. We're going to have half of it as kind of a 19th century look, and then it's going to transition into the 20th century. So mostly in this part of the building, we have Civil War items. Most of it's Gettysburg related. I'll just point out a couple of really interesting items. This is General Warren's hat. General Warren is the guy that's on that rock on Little Round Top, and he's considered one of the real heroes of Little Round Top because he was in the Corps of Engineers, and he was sent up there, and he recognized that the Union flank was vulnerable, and he called for Joshua Chamberlain and his guys to come up there and save the day. So that's his hat. It came right from the family.
The kepis don't look much like they do in the movies, do they? We should pay more attention to that.
Right. And we have a couple of really interesting battlefield anomalies. This is a struck waist plate, one of my favorite things. This is from a guy that actually was from Gettysburg. There was one unit that was actually from Gettysburg, or a company in a unit that was from Gettysburg. It was Company K, 1st Pennsylvania Reserves. They were called the Boys Who Fought at Home. And he wrote a letter to his wife, and this is, I don't have the original letter, but I have a copy. But this is the belt buckle, and it stopped the mini ball because there'd be leather behind that. So there was enough to not quite go the whole way in. But it says in this letter, I'm gonna just read a little piece. It says, "A ball struck me on the plate on my waist belt. It bruised me a good deal, but I thank God it struck there, for had it not hit my belt plate, I would this day be in the ground, for it would have went through my bowels."
Yeah.
Wild.
Amazing.
That's the, you hear about these things. There's a lot of fakes in the collector's market.
But you get,
that's a real one.
You get a feel for that stuff. I mean, you look at that and you imagine that a mini ball hitting him right in there.
Yeah. Probably felt like a real gut punch or a baseball.
Serious gut punch.
And we have 2 bullets that hit in midair. That's another neat thing in there. The Union and Confederate bullet. Sure. They say it's 1 in a million. A lot of old museums. You told me you were here for a staff ride, and that would have been a while ago, back when they had a lot of smaller museums like this all over town. Yeah. And one of the ways that they used to display relics was on plates. I don't know if you remember that. At the old Rosenstiel Museum, they did that. And so they would have different locations from the battlefield, and they put them on plates. And a lot of people see this, and they don't quite understand it. But the old timers who come here and they see that, they're like, I remember that. Yeah. So we have the different spots of the battlefield with different relics that were found over the years.
Yeah, wonderful.
And here's a uniform we talked about Gouverneur Warren, who was the hero of Little Round Top. This was his brother, Edgar Warren, who was on General Weed's staff, and he actually wore that on Little Round Top.
It's amazing if you look at this stuff, and it strikes me always how small they were.
Yeah.
Compared with the modern guys. You know?
Yeah, we didn't have McDonald's and processed sugar back then.
Right.
So, so, of course, we know about World War II war trophies. We have some items that were owned by Hitler and some of the famous Germans. And, we have the keys to the Eagle's Nest that was taken by that 101st guy right there, which is a really interesting piece. We have a piece of the couch where Hitler shot himself with the blood on it. We're working on a History Channel program right now where they did the DNA on it. These are Hitler's medals that were taken out of the apartment by an American soldier. This is a Hitler painting of the Hofbrauhaus in Munich. And this is a footstool that came out of the bunker as well. We have some really famous guns. There's a Goering pistol. That's a Hitler pistol. It's one of, I think, 4 documented Hitler pistols. And then that's a Himmler pistol. And we also have Franz von Pappen's Luger over there.
Dale, what do you think it was with American soldiers and their fascination with souvenirs?
I think there were 2 elements to it. The first was sheer joy of having survived, and you wanted a physical entity that said, "I survived this," and I will always be able to remember it, pull it out, and remember it. It wasn't really about showing off. It never was. You don't see these guys opening up the foot lockers and showing all their prized possessions and that sort of thing. It was a personal thing, and it continues to this day. I have stuff that I pulled off of battlefields that I was involved in, and so it was a way to remember it without really displaying or bragging about it, that sort of thing. And I think that's a fairly common denominator that you find among all combat veterans, I think.
And this is Sepp Dietrich's uniform. That's
What was that thing we saw in Louisville, that the guy had that pin that had been given to Goebbels?
Yeah, it was a Bulgarian, I believe, pilot's badge. And it looked like a normal one, except it was all diamond encrusted, but it had the same shape. And
a couple of $1 million worth of.
Well, I don't know how much it would sell for now. Back then, I forget what the estimate was. We did a video about it, but the guy got arrested for it. It was a great story, and then they determined he could keep it, but then the Treasury Department came down on him for like import fees or whatever, customs or whatever.
This is really, really wonderful stuff.
Oh, thanks.
The problem is you have to, well, there isn't any problem with it. It's just, we could spend days in here.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't, if we had 50 people in here, what are you going to do? Nobody would be able to see anything. So we got to expand it.
Yep, no doubt. And I'm really excited to do so because, I'll tell you this too. Over the last probably 4 years, maybe more, I've gotten so many new things that I don't even put out because I just store them right now because what am I going to, have to move too much stuff around. I got Hitler's uniform, one of only 3 that exist or 4 that exist. There's none on display anywhere as far as I know.
This got to be an ongoing, constant, having to try to find the best way to display something.
Yeah.
And then take what you've got and make a decision. There's only so much room.
Right.
So I get it.
Yeah, I mean, with the new building and this building, we're going to be able to, it's going to be like 4 times the size, and we'll still have to make some choices, of what's going to go in and what's going to get put away. But we'll also be able to have a revolving exhibit too. I think that's important. But even the Easy Company stuff, we want to do a world-class Band of Brothers exhibit.
Sure.
I mean, that's why I asked you to come on board. I couldn't think anybody better to advise on that subject. And I said the concept is to do a vignette of each of the 10 shows, so people will identify with it. Oh yeah, I remember Crossroads. That's Holland.
Sure.
And I think
immediate audience connection with
right.
it.
And I've gotten so much Easy Company stuff in the last few years, you know, from family members, and it's like I pretty much, besides that museum in Normandy, the D-Day experience, I have almost everything.
I think
it's
you
incredible.
do. I mean, really, if people knew, all the fans that we've had from Band of Brothers and that sort of, they knew it was here.
Yeah.
I mean, they think of it, it's got to be over in France somewhere or in somebody's Foot Locker, but it's here.
Yeah, right. So this is we call it the D-Day room, but this is where a lot of the Easy Company stuff is. Normally we have a TV going with Dick Winter's interview, but we turned it off for our purposes today, just so we could talk easier. So we have a lot of Normandy artifacts, a lot of different D-Day items, a lot of KIA stuff here, which I think is important to show.
Ace of Spades, it's a 506 helmet.
Yep, that's 3rd Battalion. And we have some crash relics from Lieutenant Meehan's crash site, and really great photo. If you ever walked out to the actual site, you know, there's still an area where the crops won't grow because all the fuel and stuff that's in there. Yeah, it's pretty eerie. You know, a lot of times you go up on a crash site or something, you think, well, is it here? Is it there? You know when you're on that site for sure.
You know exactly where it is.
This is some of the Dick Winters items. This is his captured G43 sniper rifle that he got when he was in Cape Prune, when he told the whole town to turn in everything. And I think he just looked at all the weapons that were there and he said,
that one.
That's the most mint weapon in there, so he took it home. And that's his 1911 that he carried through a good bit of World War II. His original DSC. Yeah, there's his knife that Nixon gave him. And that's the famous uniform that's in this photo right here, which is pretty cool. That's Preconte's uniform. Now that was supposed to wait until the new museum, but the guy who gave it to me said, hey, my friends came in there and said that uniform isn't on display. He said, I gave that to you for display. I said, all right, I'll put it on display. So I put it right next to Dick Winter so he would be happy.
Typical Preconte, he's got his ribbons out of order.
Well, and he has all bullion. You see that? I mean, that's a British-made bullion Screaming Eagle patch and a bullion CIB and a bullion jump wing. So he was a fancy guy. A great photo of him wearing it later in life, the same uniform. So we have Babe Heffron's jump jacket up there that came from his family. We have his nuts letter too, and some of his medals. There's Edward Burnett's uniform. And those are really the only Easy Company uniforms we have out, except for these Winters ones here. This is his Bastogne jacket. You know, Sink and some of those guys wore these aviator jackets. They got a hold of them, and Winters had one as well. And then that's the 43 jacket, the M43, and then there's the famous picture of him at Schoonderloch wearing the same jacket. And I tried to put him in a similar position there.
Pays to know the quartermaster.
So Dale, you knew Dick Winters, didn't you?
I did.
What are some of your fondest memories of him?
Well, he was a little prickly. He was hard to get to know, and if he considered you to be part of his outfit, he considered me to be part of his outfit anyway, and he knew I was training troops and that sort of thing. So he would say, "I better get this right, do that right." I said, "Yes, sir." You know, and I'd do exactly. And I think he liked that, and he kind of looked at me as one of his company commanders, I think. And so it was great to see him, and to see. I think one of the greatest things I've got. I found out that he had read my training schedule for the actors who were going to portray Easy Company, and he'd observed it one day, unbeknownst to me, and so. When he then went back to the States, and when I finished training, one of the producers came up and said, "Dick Winters wanted you to have this," and it was the book. And I opened it up, and he said, "Captain Dye, I think Colonel Sink would have been proud," and signed it. So it's one of my absolute prized possessions.
Oh, that's amazing. Doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah,
and what a compliment, you know, wow. And since you played Colonel Sink, there's a famous Sink cup there. That's one of the chalices that they had made. So what first happened was some of the higher command in the 101st got the middle ones, and that's where some of the battalion commanders got them. And those were actually made out of Hermann Goering's hunting cups, and then
Oh,
they had them re-engraved. And then the generals got this type. This is General McAuliffe's gold cup, also made out of some of Goering's wedding silver, re-engraved. So then Colonel Sink saw that and thought, well, Colonel Sink being Colonel Sink, he said, I think my officers should get a cup too. So they got a bunch of other cups. And some people, I think Ed Shames said that they melted down coins, but some of the other historians say no, that they were also other Goering chalices, and they engraved them with the different officers' names, and they put a jump wing on there, and then across the bottom it has the campaign. So Normandy, Holland, Bastogne, or Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah, I've heard the same stories, and that's one of the neat things about a museum like this is if you're really interested in this stuff, if you're a Band of Brothers Easy Company fanatic, and you read all these stories and you get the different versions.
Yeah.
Well, now you could come in and look right at it and say, I don't believe version 1 or version 2. There it is.
Now, Colonel Sink wasn't around, of course, when the series was made. What are some things that you did to prepare to play him?
He was from North Carolina, and he had a very distinct North Carolina accent. And so I contacted the family and said, look, I'm going to portray your dad, and I just want to make sure I don't, do anything stupid. And we got to talking about him and how he talked and how he acted and that sort of thing. And he was kind of a blustery guy. And I said, yeah, but I'm from Southeast Missouri. She said, no, you'll do fine. And she sent me some recordings of speeches that he had made. So I would walk around listening to him, and that's how I kind of got that North Carolina drawl that you hear Sink using all the time. That came from listening to his speeches. That and the fact that he was known as Bourbon Bob, and particularly like that, and so do I. So in order to portray it properly, I had to drink a lot of bourbon.
All right, well, we just wrapped up our time with Dale. Again, he's going to be on the advisory board for the Gettysburg Museum of History. We just took him into the new space over here where he had some brilliant ideas of some things that he's going to do. Here's Naomi right here. She works at the museum. But anyway, also be watching for the panel discussion that we're going to be having with Dale and Matt Leach, Mark Lawrence, and John Orloff right here on History Underground. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to join with us in our project to expand the Gettysburg Museum of History and to keep it open free to the public, please visit gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com/foundation.